Sometimes, karma doesn't need to wait a lifetime, it walks right into the courtroom. This story of betrayal, justice, and redemption will make you believe that no one escapes the truth forever. Before we begin, hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and stay until the end, because the twist in this courtroom will leave you speechless. Maya Thompson had built her life on faith, loyalty, and endless patience. A 34-year-old black woman from Atlanta, she had weathered storms most people wouldn't survive. She had stood beside her husband, Richard, for 10 years, through layoffs, debt, and the years when they could barely afford a shared meal of rice and beans. But what Maya didn't know was that while she was patching up holes in their life, Richard was busy tearing them wider with his lies. The day began like any other. The Georgia sun poured through the blinds of their small suburban home, casting golden stripes across the breakfast table. Maya was humming to herself as she packed lunch for Richard, turkey sandwich, apple slices, the way he liked it. She tucked in a little note that read, "Love you, R, don't forget to smile today." She had no idea that while she was sealing that lunchbox, Richard's phone buzzed across the counter with a message that read, "Can't wait to see you tonight, baby. Wear that shirt I like." The sender's name, Sabrina. Sabrina wasn't just anyone, she was the kind of woman who walked into a room and made people forget what they were saying. Long red curls, sharp heels, and a perfume that lingered in every conversation she left behind. She worked at Richard's office, the new marketing assistant, and she knew exactly how to tilt her head and smile just enough to make a married man feel single again. Richard had fallen fast. It started with lunch breaks, then, work meetings, and soon, secret weekends, out of town. But the real betrayal wasn't just the affair, it was the fact that he had convinced himself that Maya no longer fit into the life he wanted. When Richard came home that evening, Maya greeted him with her usual warmth. "Hey, babe, dinner's almost ready," but his eyes were distant, his tone sharp. "Maya, we need to talk." Those 4 words carried a chill that even the warm lights couldn't fight. He sat across from her and spoke as though reading from a script. "I'm not happy anymore. I think we've grown apart." Maya blinked, trying to understand. "Grown apart? Richard, we've been through everything together. If something's wrong, we can fix it." But he just shook his head. "No, Maya, it's over. I've met someone else." Her breath hitched. "You what?" His eyes didn't flinch. "I want a divorce." The sound of those words was like a gunshot in her chest. 10 years of loyalty reduced to a single sentence. "Who is she?" Maya whispered. "You wouldn't know her." He lied, but she could read his guilt like a headline. He left that night, bags already packed. She didn't know it then, but Sabrina was waiting in the car outside, smirking like victory itself. Days turned into weeks. Maya's nights were filled with tears and unanswered prayers. Friends told her to move on, but she wasn't built that way. She believed in vows, in the power of forgiveness. But the universe had other plans. A letter arrived in the mail, a court summons. Richard had officially filed for divorce. The hearing was scheduled in a downtown courtroom. The date, her birthday. Maya sat in her car outside the courthouse that morning, gripping the steering wheel, her hands trembling. She wasn't crying anymore. Something had changed inside her. Something colder, stronger. When she stepped out, her head was high, her posture steady. Inside the courtroom, Richard sat at the front table, his arm wrapped around Sabrina's shoulder. They were laughing. Maya's stomach turned, but she took her seat quietly. The judge entered, a tall black woman named Judge Dolores King, known for her sharp wit and no-nonsense justice. The kind of judge who could see through fake smiles like glass. Judge King glanced at the couple and then at Maya. "Mr. Thompson, I understand you're filing for divorce. Is that correct?" Richard nodded. "Yes, Your Honor. Irreconcilable differences." Maya said nothing. The judge's eyes narrowed. "Mrs. Thompson, do you agree to this divorce?" Maya hesitated, then said softly, "If he no longer wants me, I won't beg him to stay." The courtroom was silent, except for the faint clicking of Sabrina's heels as she shifted smugly in her seat. Judge King noticed. "And you must be." Sabrina smiled. "His fiancé." The word hung heavy in the air. The judge's eyebrows arched. "Fiancé. Interesting, considering Mr. Thompson is still married." There was a low murmur in the room. Judge King leaned back. "Well, this should be simple then. But before I finalize this, I need to understand the full picture. Mr. Thompson, how long have you been in this relationship with Miss Sabrina?" Richard cleared his throat. About 8 months." Maya's heart sank. 8 months. That meant he'd been cheating while pretending to love her. Judge King nodded slowly. So during the time you were still legally married, you engaged in an extramarital relationship? Richard stammered. Well, technically, yes, but, no buts, Judge King snapped. You do realize that in this state, adultery affects spousal support and property division. The color drained from Richard's face. Sabrina scoffed quietly. We're not here for money. He just wants freedom. The judge turned to her sharply. Excuse me, Miss Sabrina, but last I checked, you're not a party in this case. One more interruption and I'll have you removed. The courtroom chuckled softly. Maya watched, silent but dignified, her fingers clasped together on her lap. Judge King looked back at Maya. Mrs. Thompson, do you have legal representation? Maya shook her head. No, Your Honor, I couldn't afford one. The judge's expression softened. Very well, I'll make sure this proceeding remains fair. Then something unexpected happened. Judge King looked through the documents Richard's lawyer had submitted, and her expression darkened. Mr. Thompson, I see here you listed joint savings accounts and the marital home as separate property belonging solely to you. Care to explain? Richard hesitated. Well, I earned most of the money, Your Honor. Maya didn't contribute as much. Judge King folded her hands. And yet, these statements show her name on every deposit record. It seems she was the one transferring funds from her paycheck to cover your mortgage for the past 4 years. The courtroom gasped. Maya's eyes widened. She hadn't even realized the judge had those records. Judge King smiled faintly. Looks like Mrs. Thompson has been holding this family together longer than anyone noticed. Sabrina rolled her eyes, whispering something to Richard, but the judge wasn't done. Mr. Thompson, it also says here you withdrew $10,000 from the joint account just 2 weeks before filing for divorce. Care to tell the court where that money went? Richard shifted uncomfortably. It was, for personal reasons. Personal? Huh. Judge King tapped her pen. Was that before or after you purchased a diamond bracelet from Cartier, under Miss Sabrina's name? The room went still. Even Sabrina's confident smirk faltered. Maya stared at Richard, tears threatening to fall. You used our savings on her. He avoided her gaze. Judge King leaned forward. Mr. Thompson, I hope you understand the seriousness of this. Spending marital funds on an extramarital partner constitutes financial misconduct. She slammed her gavel lightly. We're not finalizing anything today. I'm ordering a financial review and full disclosure from both parties. Richard groaned, Sabrina huffed, and Maya sat still, her heartbreak slowly hardening into quiet power. When the session ended, Maya stepped outside the courthouse, the air thick with tension. Reporters and onlookers had gathered. The case had caught public attention due to Judge King's reputation. Sabrina brushed past Maya, muttering, "You should have let him go gracefully. Now you're just embarrassing yourself." Maya turned, her voice calm but firm. Embarrassing myself? Honey, I've done nothing but love a man who didn't deserve me. The embarrassment is his to carry. For the first time, Sabrina didn't have a comeback. As Maya walked away, the first drops of rain began to fall. She looked up, feeling something shift inside her. She wasn't the broken woman who walked into that courtroom, she was becoming someone new. Someone the world would soon see. The rain that began outside the courthouse that day didn't stop for 2 weeks. It was as if the heavens themselves were washing away the lies that had tainted Maya's marriage. During those long, gray days, she barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Richard's smirk, Sabrina's smug little grin, and the flash of that diamond bracelet she unknowingly paid for. But pain has a strange way of becoming fuel. Maya, the woman who once lived for her husband's happiness, began living for her own justice. One evening, while sitting at her kitchen table surrounded by stacks of bills, she noticed something odd on one of the old mortgage statements. A transfer labeled, RT Consulting LLC, a company she'd never heard of. Curious, she did a little digging online and discovered that it was registered under Richard's name. He had been secretly funneling money from their joint account into that company for almost 2 years. It wasn't just betrayal anymore, it was fraud. Maya realized she couldn't face this alone, so she reached out to someone who had always believed in her, her older brother, Marcus. Marcus was a former Marine turned private investigator, with a reputation for digging up the truth in the darkest places. When Maya told him everything, his jaw clenched. He played you, sis, he said, voice deep with anger. But don't worry, we're going to play smarter. Over the next week, Marcus went to work. He traced Richard's financial records, pulled up company filings, even found photos of Richard and Sabrina at an expensive resort in the Bahamas, just a month before he claimed they were working through marriage issues. The receipts were all there. Flights, hotels, luxury dinners, all charged to their joint credit card. Maya's heartbreak was now wrapped in cold, hard evidence. When the next court date arrived, the tension was thick. The same judge, Dolores King, presided with her usual unshakable poise. But this time, Maya didn't sit quietly. She arrived in a crisp navy suit, hair perfectly styled, and eyes sharper than ever. She carried a folder, organized, color-coded, and lethal. Richard noticed immediately. He leaned toward Sabrina and whispered, "Don't worry. She's just trying to act tough." But when Maya stood up and said, "Your Honor, I have evidence I'd like to present," even the judge leaned forward. Maya's voice was calm but steady as she walked the court through every discovery. The fake company, the secret transfers, the lavish spending on Sabrina. Every document she presented felt like another nail sealing Richard's coffin. The courtroom gasped when Marcus took the stand as her witness, presenting photographic proof and bank statements. Sabrina's face drained of color. That's taken out of context," she sputtered. Judge King cut her off. "Miss Sabrina, you are not under oath nor are you counsel. Sit down." Richard tried to protest. "Your Honor, she's twisting things. That money was for a business I was starting." Judge King raised her hand. "A business? One that conveniently lists your mistress as a consultant and has no revenue, no employees, and no tax filings. Mr. Thompson, do not insult this court." Maya's hands trembled, not from fear, but from relief. The truth was finally shining through. And then, in a moment that no one saw coming, the judge asked Maya a question that would change everything. "Mrs. Thompson, if given the choice, would you still wish to proceed with this divorce?" The room went silent. Maya looked at Richard, his expensive suit, his shallow eyes, the man she once thought was her forever, and then she turned to Judge King. "Yes, Your Honor, but I want the truth written in every line of this judgment." Judge King nodded slowly. "Then you shall have it." She ordered Richard to the stand for questioning. What followed was a cross-examination that would have made any lawyer sweat. "Mr. Thompson," the judge began, "you testified last session that you and Mrs. Thompson had irreconcilable differences. Would you say those differences began before or after your relationship with Miss Sabrina?" Richard shifted in his seat. "Before, Your Honor. Yet," Judge King continued, "you stated the relationship began 8 months ago, and Mrs. Thompson has provided records showing you were still cohabiting and sharing finances until 4 months ago. So, were you lying then, or are you lying now?" Richard swallowed hard. I don't recall the exact timeline." The judge leaned forward. "Oh, I think you do. You just don't like how it sounds under oath." The courtroom erupted in whispers. Sabrina shot him a glare, whispering harshly, "You said it wouldn't get this far." He ignored her. Judge King wasn't finished. "And Mr. Thompson, this account of yours, RT Consulting LLC, was opened using your wife's social security number, wasn't it?" Richard froze. "It was a mistake. Using someone's identity to open a financial account is not a mistake, it's fraud," Judge King said sharply. "You're lucky Mrs. Thompson hasn't pressed criminal charges." At that, Maya stood. Her voice was soft but strong. "Your Honor, I don't want revenge. I just want closure, and justice for the years I gave to someone who saw me as less than enough." Judge King studied her for a moment, then said something that made everyone's heart skip. "Mrs. Thompson, justice doesn't always wear the face of anger. Sometimes, it's quiet strength like yours that teaches others what consequences really look like." Then came the bombshell ruling. Judge King declared that Maya would receive full ownership of the marital home, half of Richard's business assets, and reimbursement for every dollar spent on Sabrina through their joint account. She also denied Richard's request to withhold spousal support, citing his proven misconduct. "Actions have consequences, Mr. Thompson," the judge said. "And today, you've met yours." Richard's face went pale. But Your Honor." "Enough," Judge King interrupted. "You signed your marriage away the moment you brought your mistress into this courtroom. Divorce granted, with prejudice. Mrs. Thompson, you are free to move forward with your life." The gavel struck once, echoing like thunder. Maya didn't cry. She simply gathered her documents, thanked the judge, and walked out, head high. But as she reached the courthouse doors, she heard Sabrina's voice behind her. "You think you've won. You're still nothing without him." Maya turned slowly, her eyes glinting. Nothing, honey, I was everything before. You just met me after I remembered who I am. Then she walked away, leaving Sabrina speechless and Richard hollow-eyed beside her. But fate wasn't finished yet. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. News cameras captured every moment. Within hours, the story of the mistress in court went viral online. Social media exploded. #MayaWinsJustice trended across platforms in the USA and UK. Women across the world praised her courage. And as Richard watched the coverage that night, he realized what true regret felt like. His business partners withdrew, clients canceled contracts, and even Sabrina began to distance herself when the backlash hit. Maya, meanwhile, began rebuilding her life. She used her settlement money to start a small nonprofit helping women navigate divorce and financial abuse. Within months, her story inspired thousands. She didn't just survive betrayal, she transformed it into power. But as life began to settle, one more twist was waiting. One that would test her newfound peace more than anything before. For months after that courtroom showdown, Maya Thompson's name stayed on everyone's lips. News stations ran segments about her courage, influencers shared her quotes, and women's groups across the USA and UK used her story to raise awareness about financial betrayal. Maya had gone from being a heartbroken wife to a quiet symbol of resilience. But as her new life took shape, something unexpected began to unfold, not in her world, but in Richard's. Richard's career had once been his pride. After the divorce ruling went public, his company's reputation crumbled. Clients didn't want their name tied to a man accused of cheating, lying, and defrauding his own wife. Within 3 months, RT Consulting LLC was under investigation for tax evasion and misuse of marital funds. Richard's lawyer called him one afternoon with news that shattered what little peace he had left. The IRS has opened an audit. You may want to get ahead of it before it turns criminal. Sabrina wasn't around when that call came. She had already packed her things after the media found old photos of her mocking Maya on social media. The internet turned on her overnight. Once the glamorous, new fiancé, she became the face of online scorn. Companies she worked with dropped her, her friends ghosted her, and she found herself scrolling through Maya's photos late at night, realizing that she had stolen something that never truly belonged to her. Meanwhile, Maya's life blossomed. Her nonprofit, Rebuild Her, gained traction fast. She helped women who were too afraid to leave toxic relationships, teaching them how to regain financial independence and self-worth. Local news called her the Phoenix Woman. Even Judge Dolores King sent her a handwritten note that read, "Justice may start in the courtroom, but women like you keep it alive outside it." But as much as Maya had grown, a part of her still wondered how Richard could have thrown everything away. That question was answered one rainy evening when she received a call from an unknown number. Against her better judgment, she answered. "Maya, it's me," said a familiar, broken voice. "Richard." She froze. "What do you want?" There was silence on the other end, then a shaky sigh. "I wanted to say I'm sorry. You were the best thing that ever happened to me, and I ruined it. Everything I touched since that day turned to dust." Maya didn't respond at first. The old her might have softened, but this Maya, forged in pain and purpose, simply said, "You're not sorry for what you did, Richard. You're sorry because you lost." He exhaled sharply. "Maybe, but I still needed you to know." She hesitated, then replied, "I already did." And hung up. That night, Maya sat by her window, the city lights reflecting off the raindrops. For the first time in years, she felt peace. Not the kind that comes from getting even, but the kind that grows when you finally let go. A few weeks later, she was invited to speak at a national conference on women's empowerment. She almost said no. Public speaking terrified her, but something in her heart said it was time. The event was held in Washington, D.C., in a grand hotel ballroom filled with hundreds of women, journalists, and even a few familiar faces from her past. When she stepped onto the stage, she looked out at the crowd and took a deep breath. "I once believed that love meant sacrifice," she began. "That forgiveness meant letting people hurt you again. But I learned that love doesn't destroy, it builds. And when someone tears down what you've built, you have two choices: stay in the rubble or rise from it." Her words moved the room to tears. Cameras flashed, applause echoed, and Maya felt something lift from her chest, the last traces of the woman who once begged a man to love her. As fate would have it, among the audience that day sat Judge Dolores King. After Maya stepped off stage, the judge approached her with a proud smile. "Mrs. Thompson," she said, "you remind this court officer why justice matters. You didn't just win a case, you started a movement. Maya smiled warmly. Thank you, Judge, but I think justice started the moment I stopped waiting for someone else to save me. Months turned into a year. Rebuild Her expanded to other states. Maya became a sought-after speaker and advocate. She even began writing a book titled, Signed, but Not Silenced. Yet one story lingered unfinished, Richard's. He was eventually charged with financial misconduct related to the fake company and ordered to repay the funds he'd hidden. When he failed to do so, his assets were seized. The mansion he had bought with Sabrina was sold to cover debts. He ended up renting a small apartment downtown, working a low-paying consultant job. The man who once looked down on Maya now avoided mirrors because they showed him everything he'd become. One day, as fate would have it, Richard found himself in a familiar courthouse, not for divorce this time, but to finalize his bankruptcy. When he walked in, he froze. Behind the clerk's desk stood a woman he never thought he'd see again. Maya, now volunteering part-time with the court's Women's Assistance Program. She looked radiant, calm, untouchable. For a moment, Richard thought of leaving. But something compelled him to step forward. Maya, he said softly. She turned, recognized him, and offered a polite smile. Mr. Thompson. Her tone was formal, distant, yet respectful. He searched her eyes for any trace of the woman who once loved him, but she was gone, replaced by someone whole. You look happy, he murmured. I am, she replied. Peaceful, actually. You should try it. Before he could respond, Judge King entered the courtroom to oversee another case. She spotted Richard and gave a knowing look. Mr. Thompson, good to see you again. Hopefully under better circumstances. He nodded awkwardly. Maya excused herself with grace, leaving behind a silence heavier than any gavel. That night, Richard sat alone in his empty apartment, scrolling through social media. He stumbled on a viral clip, Maya's speech from the conference. Millions of views, thousands of comments, people calling her a hero, a survivor, an icon. His heart ached, not with jealousy, but with regret so deep it burned. Meanwhile, Maya sat at her own desk, signing copies of her new book. When she reached the dedication page, she smiled and wrote, "To every woman who ever thought she wasn't enough, you are." Signed, Maya Thompson. Across town, the local news aired a segment celebrating her foundation's success. The anchor ended with the same line Judge King had once said. Justice doesn't always wear the face of anger. Sometimes, it's quiet strength. And as the screen faded to black, viewers around the world saw the final caption that defined her legacy. He signed the divorce. She signed her freedom. Checkmark, end of story. If this story moved you, hit that subscribe button, drop a heart for Maya in the comments, and share this with someone who needs to remember their worth. Because every ending can become a beginning, if you have the courage to stand up and say, I deserve better.